Dear students, I already introduced a little bit the programming projects as part of the general introduction, and today I just want to give a little bit more details of what the projects are, what I want you to do in these projects, and kind of what you're supposed to do in them. So as you already kind of discovered, we're going to have three programming projects. So the complexity of them will be slightly increasing from 1 to 3. So the first one is individual project, and it's effectively trying to make you to learn kind of extensively socket programming. And we'll do that based on a simple file retrieval application. It's not exactly FTP, not HTTPS, but we're going to implement something very simple, effectively some very file retrieval application. Project 2, I call it Confondo, it's a little bit more of socket programming, but a slightly different level. So in this one, we actually you're going to be learning more about the transport layer protocol, because what you're going to be doing is implementing some version of TCP, version of transport layer protocol. And finally, the last project, Ridiculous, probably, at least for me, it's more interesting. In this one, you're going to be actually writing a router, or like some parts of the router. But just to give you a few more details of the project. So the first one, okay, so for each of the project, I already posted a description online, so please go there. Don't wait until the last moment, because you cannot make those projects like in 1 day or 2 days. You have to really spend time. If you have some problems, please email me, or we have also a TA for this class, so we can provide a lot of help, but please don't delay anything. So I'll go briefly for the project detail in a second, but again, a little bit more details. So we need to use the BSD sockets in Python. We will provide some of the basic examples, and you should actually learn some of this from homework 2 that I will assign shortly. And the other requirement is I really want you to learn Git as a source code management system. So therefore, I'm kind of requiring you to have at least 3 commits kind of as part of the project. You can fake it. You can just create the 3 commits and then complete the code and make another commit. But at least I will be checking that you have 3 commits in your project. Just a little bit more detail. So if you haven't discovered yet, I think I linked it a couple of places. The project descriptions are online on class website. So it's outside the Canvas, but you can easily find it through Canvas. There's extensive description. Please go over, try to learn it, try to figure out what the problems are, what the complications are. The specification is quite detailed. I try to put as many details as possible for the server and for the client application. So what you're expecting to do, where it should be written, what kind of connection, what kind of files should exist, what the kind of requirements for the output, and so forth. So these are important parts, because I'm going to be using the automated script. If your program is not satisfying the requirements I'm putting here, you're simply not going to get any credit. For the auto grading part, you're actually going to get some of the test cases. I think it's at the bottom of this page. So some of the test cases are marked as public and some of the private. So the public test cases, you will see the results immediately after you submit your program to the gradoscope, and the private test cases, these are the ones I will see after the submission deadline. So this effectively grading, you should at least try to have 100% for all the public test cases. And as you can see, there's a check for the at least 3 Git commits. If I get a little bit more details, what you can do, what you cannot do. So for the environment setup. So there's actually 2 ways you can work with the homework. If you're using Linux directly, you can just write on your computer. You can do similar stuff, given we're using Python, even on Windows, even on Mac. It doesn't really matter. But to unify the environment, I actually encourage and kind of to learn more about different technologies. So you can try to play with the Vagrant tools. I will try to post another video with a brief introduction, but I think I already posted some of the video introductory, what Vagrant is, what is Docker, what's the difference between these two. So these instructions effectively give you steps how to create an environment where the skeleton code already be placed. The skeleton code doesn't do much, it's just the two files, the client and server Python scripts, but it has important part that kind of create archive that you will need to submit. So please use that, please don't invent something new, just follow the instructions here how to create those archives. Otherwise, you may have some additional problems or not going to get credit for some of the parts. What else? So you may already saw that I have posted Google Cloud. So if you kind of try to play with Google Cloud, you can actually ignore part of the Vagrant stuff and just directly use this Git cloning and doing some other parts, like without using the Vagrant part, because it's already Linux, you can write stuff directly. So it definitely would work for the project 1 and 2. For the project 3, I will provide additional information how you can run it in Google Cloud. But if you run it on your local machine, everything should be fine. Just a note, you can, if you go to the Vagrant tool description, you'll find that it's available on all platforms, so you can simply install that thing. You may also install VirtualBox if you want to use VirtualBox, and then just run these commands that are provided here, like you clone, you Vagrant app, Vagrant SSH. On Windows, you may need to also install Git, but for that, if you have questions, please let me know, and I'll try to give you some help. So that's kind of mechanics. So this mechanics actually very similar for the project 2 as well, and kind of project 2 is kind of a form of extension of the project 1. But I'll try to talk a little bit more. So back to the projects. So the project 2, as I said, is an implementation of file transfer protocol as a form of simplified version of TCP, but it will have all the properties of TCP. Like we're going to have a lot of multiplexing part, we're going to have some form of congestion control, very simplified version of it, but we will have all of those things. And I hope by the end of this project you will really have a good understanding what TCP is and how it's actually working. Another part of this project is that you have to start doing it collaboratively. So like if the first project is in a group of 1, the second project have to be in groups of 2 or 3 students. And with that, I will actually be not just checking that you have 3 commits in your project, but rather you have commits from each member group, each member of the group. So if you don't have commits of one of the group members, then I will consider that this group member did not participate in this project. So please be aware of this part and follow. And if I go to the description, it's again on the website. There's this kind of in the menu, there's a project to Confundo. Again, it's also linked from the Canvas page. The description is quite similar in structure. It's describing like a client server, but in addition to that, it's also specifying what exactly protocol we will be using. And it's specifying the specific headers, specific values, and specific definition of those values. So please pay close attention to all of these things because you will have to implement those things. I will provide some of the code, some of the structure that you will be able to use in Python, for example, for the header. But the majority of the work will have to be done by you. And again, there's a how to run, what is expected, and some of the example run with the sequence numbers. So again, you have to pay very close attention to these numbers, to these examples, because everything will be checked automatically, and hopefully you'll see positive results for all the test cases. Okay, so there's more stuff for the end connection, for the congestion control, and what kind of things I'm expecting you to output on the terminal, so automated script can check things. So So there's a few additional stuff. So this one, if you're using a Vagrant file, you don't have to use Vagrant file for kind of local testing. So this one is mostly for real environment. You can also do similar stuff with Google Cloud. So for example, you can create multiple VMs, set up different loss parameters. It will be just different interface names. And kind of run those experiments in Google Cloud. Or if you've already playing with Vagrant, you can do it with Vagrant and it should work nicely for you. And finally, again, there's a very detailed grading criteria. Again, some of the tests public, some of them are private. But if you pass most of the, I'm assuming you're going to pass all of the public tests, you have to also pay close attention to what stuff is being checked by the private test cases, because some of these elements, if I remember correctly, some of the timeout, some of the loss environment is not tested by public tests, but I will be evaluating those things whether you implement it or not. Okay, so getting back to the project description, so the last project is slightly different in structure. And you're going to be doing slightly different things. Is you're going to be implementing the actual router. Like, don't worry, like, you don't have to, like, it's not a hardware router. It's like just a small program that will be implementing logic of the router. But it's still, it will be legitimate all components of the like packet processing. And specifically, you will be receiving a raw Ethernet frames. And from these raw Ethernet frames, you have to like extract whatever addresses you need, process those addresses, and properly forward this information to one of or other interfaces. So there will be, so effectively your router, if I am trying to remember the specific definition. So I will provide you, like there will be test environment and there will be test environment. Test environment for you and the testing environment for me. They will be quite simple. I think it would be just one router and a few nodes, but the effective router will have multiple interfaces. And I will give you a specific routing table to set. So this part of the static routing table. And the static routing table will say that for this network forward to this interface, for this network forward to that interface, for that network forward to this interface, and maybe including some default routes to some other interfaces. And all other process, you have to do it yourself. So I'll talk a little bit more like when I get to the project description. So again, like you get Ethernet frames, there will be some mechanism how you're going to send traffic. So how can you send Ethernet packet to outgoing interface? But you will have to figure out how to get the Ethernet addresses, how you get IP packet, how to extract things from the IP packet, how to format the new IP packet, how to encapsulate, and so forth. Again, similar to the previous project, I will check that everybody in your group is working through Git commits. And to get back to the project description, so this is in ridiculous here. There's a nice Kofifi, that the mascot for this specific project. So again, the description, I try to be very, very specific. This is like for the test environment that you can use. I will be using slightly different, just in case, like to make sure that you don't cheat on the project. We'll be using slightly different environment. This is an example of things, example of the environment, how you can deal with the stuff, kind of example of Ethernet frames, and what you're supposed to do. And what you're supposed to do is effectively implement ERP protocol and IP forwarding logic protocol. Again, there is a description in very detail, in kind of much details already available. Please take a look. And if you see some omissions, some problems, please let me know. The skeleton code for this project is not yet available, but we'll make it available as soon as we have it, but it should be very, very soon. The test environment for this one is extremely easy to set up using Vagrant. I will try to figure out how to do it in Google Cloud, but it's just a problem with Google Cloud is a little bit more things involved in the process. but it should be also easy to do. And there's just a lot of different descriptions, and similar, we have a grading criteria where we're going to be using. So this one is a little bit less number of test cases, so these test cases a little bit more aggregate, but again, they also split in the public and private cases. There are a few extra credits for this project. If you want to, so this is kind of optional part. I'm not asking you to implement ICMP, destination unreachable, destination port unreachable. So this one is for traceroute command. But if you implementing those things, then I will try to give you some additional credit for the project. Okay, so I hope I scared you enough for the projects. Okay, they're not too scary, but be aware that the projects are quite complex and time-consuming. So I am expecting you to start looking at the project, thinking how you're going to be implementing those projects. Look, when you're doing the homework, try to think of what parts of this homework can be reused as part of the project, because I'm trying to make the kind of homework related to the project that you're doing. Okay, and as you already saw in requirements, you have to create a group, and don't delay creating the group. Like this is online class, I guess it's not that easy to know who is who in this class, but you have to sign up for the groups and do it as soon as possible. Like, please chat, please post something on the discussion forum if you feel that you want to have additional discussions with the group members. But or if you need to kind of me to help you with the assignment, please let me know. But don't delay this process. This shouldn't be a hard task to do, but it needs to be done very quickly. Okay, so with that, I hope to see you soon.